Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, good morning. So, we've been sitting together for some period of time, and now there seems to be some activity which is about to happen. But I encourage you to remain as you are. There really is nothing for you to do. And in a way, I can say I have absolutely nothing to give you. But I can point you to the heart of being. Lord Shiva sits here as the holy hill Arunachala, that which is called you here. And this is a direct pointing. This hill, this Lord Shiva, has manifested here as this stillness. And sits there and sits here as this stillness, unmoving. In the center of the entire universe. And on the surface of this hill, there are deer, monkeys, birds, trees, waterfalls, humans, cows, goats, and around this hill, this holy presence of Lord Shiva, there are rickshaws, lorries, buses, people, scooters, chaos, often, as well as peace, temples, restaurants, ashrams, all is here and going on. Sometimes completely unaware of the presence of Lord Shiva and Arunachala. But this abiding nature of Arunachala is not here simply because it has something to give. It is here, however, to show us the nature of our own being, as being consciousness, as stillness itself. If we know this to be our nature, then what goes on in our lives, moment to moment, at any given moment, may be either still and quiet, like the hill at night, or it may be filled with commotion, like the town at 9 a.m. We come to satsang, we come together in order to know, in order to taste this stillness, which is the presence of Lord Shiva, the presence of Arunachala, and the essence of your heart. You have come here drawn by that, called by that, whether you know it or not, whether you feel it or not. If you are here, you're here because this stillness, this grace is present in you and around you. You don't need to know it's there in order for it to be there. You might, however, need to stop seeking it. You may need to stop looking for it. This is why we begin satsang with a long period of quiet. Some of you I've known for a long time. You are able and willing to step into a moment of quiet, a half an hour of quiet, an hour of quiet, to enjoy it, to revel in it. And for some of you, this is a new experience. This remaining as you are, as peace, as stillness. In order to know who you truly are, be like Holy Arunachala. The presence of Lord Shiva, the presence of Lord Arunachala is within you. Turn toward that. It's grace which has been calling you and pulling you into this here now. Let yourself be pulled. Abide as whatever stillness, whatever quietude, whatever wisdom seems to be present for you here now. It's not necessary that you sit like a mountain every minute of every day. Only that you realize what is at the heart of the mountain and what is on the surface. If you know what is at the heart of being, and you know what is on the surface, then you don't need to interfere with the monkeys. You don't need to chase the cows away, and you don't need to complain about the horning of the rickshaws. You can just keep quiet, knowing yourself as that which is aware here now. Not as this me personality, but as awareness itself. That which you are, each moment that you recognize that there is a recognition that that which is aware is here now, you realize the stillness of Arunachala, the heart of Lord Shiva. Then the dog can bark, the body can be happy, the body can be uncomfortable, the mind can be still, the mind can be thinking. All is well. That which is here as the heart of stillness remains undisturbed. And even if a disturbance appears, inside or out, this stillness is always recognized. This awareness always knows itself as the foundation and the presence of being consciousness. And you are that. Now life is allowed to come and go as it wishes, undisturbed, because there is no you to disagree, to criticize, to judge. There is just awareness of this suchness, of this moment. So I encourage you, remain as you are, as the heart of being. Know yourself to be that which is aware. Know yourself to be that Lord Shiva, that Arunachala, Baba, which sits in the heart of being, in the heart of your being. All of this that you see, all of this that you are, has brought about this moment. Embrace it, enjoy it. You are this. So there's a microphone here. If you would like to have a conversation or speak, you can raise your hand and someone will send the microphone your way. You know, I mention this often, but I'll say it again for those of you that are new. It's very, very happily useful and supportive when you actually ask a question. And I know that some of you don't want to speak in front of the group, but it's very, very helpful. And the reason is that often our experience is that if you speak the mind and heart of several people in the room. So I encourage you, if you have a doubt, if you have a fear, if you have a question, if you want to share your experience, don't hesitate. Come and play.
It's a little bit more of an intellectual question than it's to elaborate or to maybe explain a little. The reality seems to be even that we are not in the world, but the world is in you. You see, and it's hard to grasp for me. It's just like, because I think I am this person in the world, but in fact they tell me no, the world, the whole universe is actually in you. Could you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yes, this is absolutely true. The whole world is within you. The difficulty might be that you're having at the moment is the idea that you are this body and that you have this feeling, somehow this feeling, that this body is separate from all the bodies around it, from all of the experiences. This is actually misunderstanding, you can say, as Bhagavan would say. This misunderstanding is at the root of the reason why you feel limited, you suffer, and you seek. So it's not all bad. But in order to be liberated from that belief system, he has given us this question, who am I? So I could be here for another hour talking to you, trying to figure out some technical way, some scriptural way to get you to understand that the world is within you. This would fail because I would be speaking to your mind, this mind that wants to understand. This mind that wants to understand, whatever it might be for you, it might be a different question, it might be the same question. But this mind that wants to understand is actually a barrier to true understanding. This is why Sri Bhagavan gave us the inquiry. He said, even though you might know everything with the mind, you might know all about the world, you might know all about meditation, you might know all about scripture, if you don't know yourself, you won't know anything. And so he gave us this question, so that when these kinds of questions come up in the mind, meaning, this is actually not a question, I would say this is a doubt. How can I be, right? How can all of the world be within me, rather than this feeling I have, which is I am in the world, right? That's the feeling. This is the feeling I am the body. The body is in a world, or the world. The inquiry takes us directly around what wants to know and into the being of presence. So it tells us, Bhagavan tells us, don't want to know scripture, don't want to know what is out there, don't want to answer these questions of understanding and misunderstanding in the mind. Want to know, who am I? Because this is really the only way that this question, how can the world be all in here? How can all of this be me? This is really the only way it can be answered. If at every moment there's a remembrance every time the mind brings up this question or this doubt, what is this? What is going on? Come back and ask this question, who wants to know this? What is this mind trying to figure out through this identification with the body or with the thoughts? Who is this? The Tibetan tradition uses this metaphor of like an hourglass. You know an hourglass? This is a piece of glass that goes like this and goes like that and has sand inside, and you can turn it over and the sand runs out. Well, they use this hourglass metaphor in order to indicate that in spiritual practice and spiritual life, there is a period of time where we have to, in a way, concentrate our energies or concentrate our attention. This is why I can spend an hour or two trying to get your mind to understand, this is out here, on the surface, what is the foundation of your question? Or I can point you back to the I, which is this. The interesting thing is that given enough inquiry and enough interest on your part, when you come to this neck of this hourglass and you are intensely focused on being, not on understanding, but on being. Who is this I? What is being referred to here? Show me this. What is real? This is my interest. Let the mind be stupid. It's okay. There is a moment that comes when this bottleneck goes this way. And it opens back up again, right? Just like the hourglass, it opens back up again. The difference between what's down here and what's up here is that what's up here knows itself. Before, I was a small object in this vast life of experience that I was living. Now, I am that which is aware of all of life, and I can see it for what it is, and that is myself. Everything I see is myself. This is one definition, one way, one metaphor of explaining the process of deepening and then letting go into what was already here, right? Yeah. So this wisdom that you are curious about, this understanding that you want to come, it's already there for you in some way. But the recommendation is, stop asking the question. Ask a different question. And come to know who you are. And if you know who you are, you know who all beings are. You know what all experience is. You know what its foundation is. And you see that without this being consciousness, without this awareness which we have in the waking state, none of this, whatever it is, none of this is knowable. But with full consciousness and full recognition, without knowing with the mind what all of this is, you know what everything is. And you see it for what it is as consciousness itself and the manifestation of the heart of being. So then you can see that Arunachala is rising in the heart of being. Lord Shiva is present in the heart of being. Sri Bhagavan is eternally here in the heart of being. And of course, this moment is that moment where it's realized, and I am that. But this I is now the recognition of the totality of being consciousness. It's no longer the little I that says, I am the body and I can figure this out with the mind. Now, all is well. Yeah. So keep being curious. Just notice what you are curious about and keep coming to what is the source of this curiosity, what is the source of this desire to know who is this one, who is this I, who am I? Keep coming back to that. Yeah. And these other things, these other interests that you have, the interests that you have in life, the interests that you have in the external world, the interests that you have in these intellectual pursuits, they will still come and go because these are tendencies, aren't they? They are samskaras, they are the vasanas which you came into this life with, for, you can say, for. But once you see through them, once you know them just to be the flotsam and jetsam of the river as it passes by, once you know, oh, there's a branch, there's a leaf, there's a stick, there's the body of a dead bird, there's a fish, once you know that, then you can just sit on the bank of the river and enjoy the flow. Before that, you have so much curiosity about every single thing that's flowing down the river that you can't see what's sitting on the bank. What is sitting on the bank is awareness itself. That which is conscious, that which is here as being consciousness. So the inquiry, the question, who am I, gives us this space to rest in this moment fully. No past, no future. And even what seems to be here now is of little interest. It will be dealt with, certainly, out of wisdom, but not because I need to do something about it, but because spontaneously life is dancing and you are in harmony with that. So you dance. Always in the awareness, with the recognition, not always as a mental process, but as a direct experience. In this moment of recognition that all is well, and that which is here now is sufficient.
Hi, Rishi. First of all, I'd love to say thank you for your pointers. You're a very fine pointer, sir. Now, I was listening to one of your satsangs the other day, and you said something about Ramana. Ramana was always the self. I know we all are the self. However, I asked a question many years ago to one of the teachers on the rooftops, and it was this: is there such a thing as intermittent realization partial realization, like a firefly, knowing and being awareness, and then jumping over to the identification of the small I. Now, he couldn't answer that question. And it became it was apparently it was provocative. Afterwards, I found out that a few of his followers didn't like the question.
Good.
Which I found really interesting.
Yeah, good.
Actually, some actually came up and thanked me for it.
Yes, a provocation, yes.
Yeah. Because I did say, Punjaji said, Papa said, he only met 3 or 4 fully enlightened human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, there are many teachers on the rooftops here.
Yeah.
So where are they in the scheme of things? And there was no answer. So the other day when I was listening to your satsang, I was reminded of it. So I thought I might bring it up again.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very important question to answer and to share.
Yeah. Thank you. There is always only this one self, as you said. This one self, however, can and does show up in all of these different forms. It's that one self which is always teaching us, whether it has great clarity, such as with a Ramana, an Anandamoyi Ma, a Papaji, this great, great clarity. But every being who is seeking is not always able to make use of the purest form of the teaching. I use myself as an example. When I first came to Sri Ramana, I was in my 30s, living in America, had been a meditator for many years in my own simple way. There weren't a lot of teachers around at that time. But I met someone who gave me that picture as a bookmark. He had just returned from Tiruvannamalai. And so I was able to have a brief conversation with him. And mostly I wanted to know, are there any books? What can I find out about this being? I was struck right away. At that time, there was almost no translation of Ramana's work or his books into English.
Paul Brunton?
Paul Brunton?
Paul Brunton.
Who? What? What about Paul Brunton?
Did he not translate?
Yes, there were books available. I'm not saying they weren't available in English in India or they weren't available in selected places. Yeah. I'm saying where I was, I couldn't find anything. And this fellow had been here. And so I was really inquiring from him, can you give me something? I want to understand. Yeah. Tell me something. Because he had told me about this inquiry. But I had a very complex mind at that time. And what he could tell me through his own direct experience, he's gone on to become quite a well-known teacher, actually. But at that time, he was just soon after his experience here, and it had not matured in him yet. And so he was not teaching. He had not understood completely, even to his own admission. He had not completely understood what he had encountered here. And he said, I don't know. The interesting thing was that he went on to become a very, very skilled, he educated himself to become a very skilled translator of both Tamil and Sanskrit. Yeah. And then he slowly began to translate all of the books that were here available in Ramana Ashram.
Is it Michael James?
No, I'm not going to tell you his name.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. Because that's not important in the story. But at that moment, there was really nothing available. And I had this deep, deep burning desire to know, you know. And so I had this picture. And I had a familiarity with the Buddhist tradition at that time, just as a passing awareness. And I was given this instruction, who am I? And it was so clear and so simple that I wasn't capable of it. Yeah, I just wasn't capable of it. This mind was too complex. It was too much in the search, too much on the hunt. Following the heart, of course, you know, but too much. So, nearby where I was living, there was a Buddhist monastery with a Burmese Buddhist teacher. I just went there for the quiet. I was married with 3 children at that time. So I started going there on Saturday mornings for a couple of hours and working full time. So I just wanted a couple of hours of quiet. I started to go there. The first time I went there, I knew in my heart, this is it. This is where I need to be right now. This was the only thing that was really available around. And there were books. Yeah, which is really what the mind wanted. It wanted books, it wanted instruction, it wanted. So for 3 years, every weekend, as much as possible, I went there and I sat in the silence and I kept saying to the bhikkhu who was there as a teacher, give me a book, give me a book. And he kept saying, no, not for you. No books for you. Come with me, I'm going to teach you how to ring this gong. And that sounds like a simple thing, but it took me months to learn how to ring the gong with such mindfulness and such presence that the gong would ring without disturbance, that I wouldn't hit it in some way that caused it to go. And he said, for you, no, it's not good. No books. So this did a couple of things. It gave me the opportunity to follow that way and just to remain as this presence, mindfully following the breath, which was the instruction at this monastery. The only thing that was taught was Satipatthana Sutta, which is mindfulness of breathing. So, and each time that I would go back to him, every few months I would kind of push him, give me book, give me book, give me book. I want to know, I want to know, I want to know. And eventually that desire ended. It wasn't there anymore. And surprisingly enough, that was when I started to discover Ramana's work. It was coming into translation at that time. But Ramana's work first came into translation as these small little books, you know, who am I? Just, you know, that was it. Later on, of course, the bigger books came into being, but only the smaller books. So I couldn't really lose my mind in those books. But I did, for a few years, go very, very deeply into Buddhist scholarship, so that vasana was not uprooted by sitting quietly. And so for several years, I delved deeply into the 10,000 books, the 10 million books, which are Buddhist tradition and commentary. And one day, when I had completely exhausted that desire, and I had given up that search and that need to understand, I was sitting quietly in my room, and this recognition spontaneously entered into the mind. Who meditates? And the whole of being turned and looked for that who, which of course couldn't be found, right? But what happened in that moment was the meditator dissolved. The meditator was gone. And what was here was awareness itself, presence. And Ramana Maharshi appeared in my heart and mind and said, "You see, I told you. Now you know who you are. Keep going. Keep going." The reason I tell you this story is because many of the teachers that are around in the world today are not that perfect vessel, myself included, that Sri Ramana and others, Adi Shankara, these perfect vessels for the teaching. But in a way, we are those perfect vessels, because each of us, each person who is somehow finds themselves in the one seat, whether they try to put themselves there, which is what happens a lot from the ego position, or whether they just find themselves there because people start showing up. Each of these beings is the answer to a call which is coming from the heart of being through each and every one of you. This is not an individual project. So once someone takes the one seat, this is a Buddhist term, once someone takes the one seat, there may still be, as you pointed out, these movements that seem to be between the perfection of a Sri Ramana Maharshi and the rather more limited wisdom of someone else. This can happen, but it's nonetheless perfect, because all are dancing in the same place for that moment. And even when misunderstanding comes either from a less than complete understanding on the part of the teacher or the sage, or a less than complete understanding on the part of the devotee, there is nonetheless a perfection in it, because something is provoked, right? Something is provoked, and some understanding comes out of it, and we don't know what the causes and the conditions of any relationship or any position that we are in. You don't know why you're here today. You may think you know, but you have no idea why you're here today. You don't know why you're drawn to a particular teacher or a particular sage. And it may be many years before you actually have any insight into what it was, that relationship was. But if your heart remains open, in that relationship you will learn, even by walking away.
You can't really walk away.
You can't really walk away. But sometimes it feels like you're walking away. But you're not really walking away, you're walking toward. It's just that you've hit the limit. Right?
Yes.
And I often share different kinds of ways that when people bring up questions about how is it I can practice? What should I do with this? What happens when I'm in this meditative state and this happens? Please, can you please point me out of this difficulty? And I will say to people, I'm giving you this tool. You can use this tool to get out of this difficulty. But when you are finished with this tool, know it. Right? You might need more than one tool. You may use several tools throughout the course of your life. But don't carry the tools around on your back the whole time. Know when to use the tool and know when to set the tool aside. So the teaching is always here. And this was the way that Bhagavan made this clear, and also the way the Buddha made it clear. The teaching is always here. It's here in books, but it's also here in person. Our question is always, does this bring me closer to this open heart of being, which I know that I am, even when I can't feel it? And if you feel something contracting, explore the contraction until it opens again. And if it's time for you to walk away from a teacher or a tool or an aspect of the teaching, that's fine. Because what Bhagavan said and what the Buddha said is, don't believe anything I say. Check. Look for yourself. Understand who you are using this teaching. Your own experience, your own understanding, your own wisdom is there. Find it. Bhagavan said, find it by asking the question, who am I? The best thing that an incompetent teacher does for you is causes you to turn your attention away from a way, a method, a person, a book, into this question, who am I? What is the source? What is the heart of being? This is a great service. So, it can be said, there are no incompetent teachers.
Thanks for the answer. Thank you. And what do you think of the teaching, just be quiet? Just be quiet and allow itself to reveal itself to itself.
Well, having spent many years sitting in a Buddhist monastery for many, many, many hours, and then having spent, 10 years as a Buddhist scholar and 8 years as a Vipassana teacher,
Okay.
I am a big proponent of keep quiet. This was the thing that attracted me most to Bhagavan in the end, was it brought me to even saying all of this that I learned, all of this that I know about the Buddhist way,
Yes.
about all the books that have been written, about all the classical texts, about being a Dharma teacher, all of this led me to this one thing that I couldn't understand when I saw that bookmark, which said, keep quiet. And I needed this Buddha Dharma way. I needed to fail over and over and over and come up against this question of who am I? Over and over and over. And it took 18 years. But when it cracked, it cracked completely. It dissolved. It was only a matter of a few weeks when I walked away from my Buddhist community, from my Sangha, from the teaching I was doing, and I went into seclusion for 3 years. I simply walked away in order to fully embrace what had been seen in this simple teaching of Sri Ramana, to keep quiet. What did that really mean? So, yeah.
Can you expand on what does it really mean to keep quiet?
So he said, can you please expand on what it really means to keep quiet? In terms of Bhagavan's teaching and in terms of Vedanta, in terms of experience, keeping quiet means to keep turning toward the source. We begin that process first by most of the time, for many of us, by just learning to keep quiet externally, right? So we learn to sit, we learn to meditate, we learn to pick up some method, we learn to do mantra, we learn to do japa, we pick up some method which requires us to turn inward just a little bit away from the outer world. So this is the first level of keep quiet. And during that period of time, we start to explore what happens in terms of our mental energy, our physical energy, and so on, until when we are able to just keep our mouth shut and sit still for a minute. So this is where it always begins. But what's always being pointed toward is a deeper recognition that having passed through this external quiet, there is this internal noise. That's what happens. It happens right away. And for many people, it's too much, and they turn back out into the world. But for those who don't, this internal noise becomes so obvious and becomes, in a way, painful, having seen it and seen the way in which, tape loops run, conditioning runs, the mind runs. Having seen all of that, one begins to say, well, I can't turn out that way again, because that's just going to take me back into the world. It's going to take me not only into the noise of my own mind, it's going to take me out into the noise of the world again. And I already know there's no relief there. So what's the option? I better go deeper. So how do I learn to still the mind? So then something like Satipatthana Sutta or some sort of training in that way can come up. This is what I will do. I will just watch the breath. I will do japa. I will say the names of God over and over and over. I will repeat this mantra over and over and over, 1,000,000 times. And the great benefit of those kinds of practices is that they do calm this busy mind, this very chaotic mind, this monkey mind. They are calmed by the repetition and the devotion that's involved in the names of God, repeating the names of God, repeating a mantra, being aware through mindfulness of breathing, feeling the sensations in the body, using the body to anchor in the present moment. And once one takes up any kind of a practice like that, there's a deep surrendering to the source that begins to happen. And this isn't happening with the mind. It's just happening through the devotion, through the dedication, that I will continue. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I certainly know what's here in the mind right now is not it. It's not what I'm looking for. It's not satisfying. It's not what I know myself to be in some way. So I will continue. So you continue with great devotion, sometimes with great enthusiasm, sometimes with boredom. You continue for a long time. And as you do that, You move closer and closer and closer to the source. And then there comes a moment when you realize you're no longer seeking anything, and yet you are still being pulled in. What is pulling you in? This becomes the question. What is this? Because there's this intuition that no matter what's going on in the mind, whether it's japa or whether it's mantra or whether it's following the breath or whatever, that has inherent in it now, after some period of time, these moments of silence, these gaps which are there. So one takes an interest in the gaps, and this happens quite naturally. And it's in these gaps that one is first introduced to this silence of being. And when this happens, there's a deepening that happens. And this silence, which can be defined as the ability to remain aware, alert, and empty. You've heard me talk about this before. Aware, alert, and empty begins to get stronger and stronger. And the result of that presence, that experience of presence, is that a deep silence starts to come from within. Now, I can't define that silence for you. I can tell you, however, that it's tangible, it's a direct perception, and it's understood to be the foundation which whatever comes into the field of awareness comes out of in some way, spontaneously. And then there's this recognition that this silence is who I am. It is the foundation of all of this. And this is the experience of Arunachala and all of this activity going on around. So now you are here as this silence, and yet all around you is all of this activity. In the mind there can be thoughts. In the heart there can be emotion and feeling. There can be relationships, there can be so on. But the deepest recognition, the deepest experience that's going on all the time is this inner experience of vast, open space in which no thing in body, mind, or world, in past, present, or future, disturbs. This is silence.
So you take, ultimately, be quiet means be the silence.
Yes. Well, you are the silence. So what's the quickest way? If you are the silence, the quickest way is to stop doing, and being is your nature. So move from doing into being. Give yourself moments, more time than that if you have it, but certainly moments throughout each day in which you touch the beingness of your nature and you stop doing and give yourself the opportunity to rest and to settle into beingness, so that what is your nature, what is here as the foundation and the ground for all experience, can show itself, can reveal itself to you. You see, it's that doer who's always trying to seek something, right? Who spends 18 years as a Buddhist scholar and teacher. It's that doer that ultimately has to be set down, has to be set aside in favor of being. And this is what happened in the experience that I had with Sri Bhagavan, where I simply said, it came to me spontaneously. I wasn't really practicing in his way at that time, but it came to me spontaneously, who is the meditator? And in that moment, everything, all those years of practice, all those years of searching, all those years of scholarly activity, they all just turned around and looked at themselves and then dissolved. Gone. Just gone. No more Buddhist, no more scholar, No more meditator. Just this. Simple. Direct. And this silence then is recognized.
On a slightly related, you know how you often talk about awareness and how we should notice awareness and that we are awareness.
That awareness is here. Yes.
Yeah. Another version of it that I sometimes try is just to be aware of myself, you know, like, and that works sometimes, you know, just to be aware of myself. But it
When you say be aware of myself, what do you mean? Do you mean of the sensations in the body, of being a body? What do you mean by being aware of myself?
well, I find that at times it is possible to directly perceive myself just as I am, you know. And sometimes that works, and it very much brings me to that stillness.
Okay.
But sometimes I also find that the mind has this tendency, as you said, to try and find what I am.
Yeah.
And it can jump around, and it can notice that feeling of presence in the body, and it can try to hold to that.
Yeah. But that's an important part of this journey of inquiry. Am I this? Am I this? Am I this? Am I that? What am I? You see, this is the intuitional trying to answer this question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, so that's a valid, it's almost, that is a
Yes,
type of
yes,
inquiry.
yes, because take that away from your mouth just a little bit. Yes, because what it does is it gives you that ability to look at the various phenomenon that are arising in your experience right at that moment. When you say, am I this? Whether you hear this in your mind or not, the answer which comes is no, I'm not this. And this continues the inquiry. Okay, if I am not this, if I'm not this body, if I'm not this feeling, if I'm not this sensation, if I'm not this thinking, if I'm not this tape loop that's running in my head, then who am I? You see? So, in one way of looking at it is you can say you have to engage this inquiry over and over and over. And in a way, nothing really happens, but you fail 10,000 times to discover the answer to who am I. Right? And then once you do that enough times, it's gone. Bhagavan said, there is no answer to the question, who am I? But that doesn't mean that there isn't validity to the process that says, am I the body? Am I the mind? Am I this thought? Am I this emotion? Am I this memory? Am I this projection into the future? Who am I? What is happening here? So there is merit in that.
It's gone, is it? Is it off? Hello? Yeah, but I agree, because a lot of the time it ends up being a bit frustrating because the mind can tend to, but there are other times when it isn't the mind that actually, it's almost like it's my true self, noticing my true self.
Okay.
And then there's that just expandedness, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I was wondering actually, because of course, there is also the process of, or the possibility of, rather than all this efforting, just truly being quiet and not doing anything.
Yes,
I mean, all that's an effort.
Yes, of course. The efforting is the doing that I'm talking about. Being doesn't require any effort. You don't have to make any effort to be who you are. If I say to you, are you aware? You say, in this moment, are you aware?
Yes.
See, that takes no effort. So this is why it's the foundation of inquiry. It's because it takes no effort to be who you are. So Ramana, Sri Bhagavan said, remain as you are. He didn't mean as you are as the personality, as the seeker, as the doer. He meant remain as you are as being, consciousness. So this is what the inquiry is about closing that gap or that separation between what we think we are and what we actually are.
So I mean, in a way, actually, the whole thing folds all together about what I initially asked about. Be still or be silent, or
Keep quiet.
Keep quiet, because I would have ultimately thought keep quiet means make no effort, and ultimately, if we're always awareness, and there's no need to go looking for it, that means again do nothing. So ultimately, really, it's all about, and even what your answer was about not being a doer, and it means do nothing. So in the end, it all basically means do nothing. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
In the end, that's what it means. But if you move into that, if you attempt to move into that effortlessness without knowing something about the way in which this mind causes you to be the doer, that wants to know, that wants to understand before you step into being, you won't get there, because you'll be trying to use the mind, you'll be trying to use experience, you'll be trying to use knowledge in the head to get you to a place that you can only get to when you open the heart, when you throw open the doors of the heart and you say, I surrender. I am here. Do with me what you will. I am yours. So when we walk in this way, this path in Sri Bhagavan's way is called the path of jnana, or knowledge. But to remain on the path of knowledge for very long, you have to have a very deep devotion to truth, right? If you are walking on the path of devotion or bhakti, in order to remain on that path for very long, you have to have a deep-seated wisdom that eventually your devotion will show you the face of the Supreme. So both are needed, both are there. One suits one person a little bit more or a little bit less than the other. One may be the dominant way of being along one's spiritual journey. One may become very, very enthralled in the path of wisdom and then suddenly find oneself on the floor in the front of some god or at the feet of Arunachala or some teacher, and feeling the heart crack open in devotion. One can be very, very devoted, spend years and years doing japa, serving the guru, being involved in all sorts of community life, doing all sorts of karma yoga, and then suddenly come to a complete halt and not want to do anything but just feel the presence of this being, no longer doing. Yeah? So these two things come together in this way, whether we start out with the preponderance of wisdom, interested more, meaning a preponderance of interested more in the wisdom aspects of the teaching, or interested more in the devotional aspects of the teaching. All paths are all, yeah, they're just streams all flowing to the main river, and the main river is flowing to the ocean. All is interconnected and necessary. The ocean is the end point, you know.
Truly have the bravery to do nothing in
Yes.
a true sense. It needs a faith and
Yes.
a trust and
Yes, and a certain level of discrimination, right? This is an important aspect of Bhagavan's teachings, of Vedanta teachings, of Advaita teaching, is that there has to be this element of discrimination. And what I mean by that is, we're definitely over time. What I mean by that is there has to be this willingness to know this is the level of understanding or wisdom that I have at this moment. And so I don't need to, I can be here as being consciousness. I can just practice being. But when there's disturbance in that, when there's turbulence in that, right, which we talked about earlier, it's also that there has to be this ability to know that one is not One is acting out of avasana. One is acting out of conditioning. One is acting out of the past, right? And know that there is a tool that one has that can help with that, whether it's the inquiry or the names of God or sitting silently in meditation. One knows that this is what is needed at this moment. So one doesn't delude oneself into thinking, I am this great enlightened being, when inside it's chaos. You know, then one knows to turn to the master, turn to the teaching, and look for guidance. The guidance is always there in you, as the guru, in the heart, but sometimes it's nice to have someone who can point the direction for us when we are sitting in perfect outward silence and inside is chaos. This happens, right? You've seen this? You can be sitting completely still and inside is chaos. So this is where skillful means, discrimination, these kinds of aspects of the traditional teachings, whether it's in Vedanta or in Buddhism, these are aspects of both. They're very similar and to a certain point. So, yeah.
I mean, essentially meaning sometimes there are inner problems that something needs to be done about.
So yeah, I typically don't encourage you to think there are inner problems. Sometimes there are things which are rising, which need attention. But the deeper understanding is that what's arising, if it needs attention, is there because it's just what's being burnt up. It's not there because it's a problem. It's there because it's an opportunity. There are no problems.
Okay, but there could be vasanas that are very unhealthy, you know what I mean, that are repeating, and I mean, they need, in a way, they somehow need to be resolved.
So understand that to say there may be vasanas which are unhealthy is to, in some ways, treat yourself, your process, life in its totality, as though it's a problem. There are vasanas. All the traditions, right? There are tendencies, yeah? There are definitely moments of conditioning. They aren't a problem. They're an opportunity. So part of what needs to happen, if you are going to progress or keep going on this path for very long, is you have to be willing to be here as awareness itself, meaning you have to be here observing what's happening in your mind, sensation, and body at different times, throughout as much time as possible, through the waking state. But this idea that you need to have a judgment or an opinion about what is rising up, this is false. This is a barrier. Opinions are happening in the mind. What is rising is simply rising. If you observe what is rising, you open your heart, you are here in this presence, you are standing in whatever is here, and you have no judgment, no opinion, then it will dissolve on its own. If you decide that something is a problem, or it needs attention, or it needs work, or it needs, then that will become your effort. That will become your doing. Awareness itself, this recognition, am I aware? Yes. This awareness itself will do the work. But not if you go into the mind and say, this work needs to be done, this is the problem, I have to do this, I have to do this technique, I have to use this method, I have to get rid of this, I have to change that, I have to understand this. That's all mind activity. So just bring awareness into this present moment. I am here. That which is aware is here now. This is a vasana, this is conditioning. Fine. Vasana is here. Fine. No problem. All is well. It's all good. Open the heart more. Don't narrow the mind. Open the heart. And all is well. Okay? Okay, we have to stop. We are going way past.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for your patience and your attention today. Thank you.